Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reddit Roast. I am at my in-laws today, which explains my grandma's knitted sweater. Mal, lovely to see you again.
Good to see you, Sam.
All right, let's dive into our first roast. Who have we got today, actually? Who have we got?
Today, we have a marketing data analyst who runs his own digital media company and a podcast. We've got an assistant general manager at a senior living facility, not something we've ever seen on the roast before. We've got a commercial banking underwriter targeting T30 programs. We've got an Indian engineer in Japan looking at European MBAs, very international. And you'll want to watch till the end for a bonus discussion on someone getting cold feet after looking at the MBA price tag. Should we dive
100
into our first profile?
130 grand of debt, I think they said.
Yes.
Ooh. Oh, we'll talk about that. Okay, good. So first profile, who have we got?
First profile, 26-year-old male marketing analyst slash media founder. Some background, he's Asian from the Bay Area. Education, bachelor's in computer science with a minor in entrepreneurship from a top 15 US public university with a 3.73 GPA, a 675 GMAT, and 5 years of work experience. Currently, OP is working as a marketing data analyst at a PE-backed home services portfolio company, originally joined as a social media specialist. Some corporate impact in there and an entrepreneurial venture as well. 4 years, 4+ years for that. Founder and executive producer of a digital media business, scaled to 500K plus subscribers and 350 million views. Some extracurriculars, also volunteer consulting, acts as an AI advisor for an education nonprofit and a marketing advisor for an environmental nonprofit. OP is also was also an Eagle Scout, led a team to build and donate computers to a local youth club. Podcasting, hosted and produced a video podcast focusing on sports and culture, and also was an intramural sports captain in his undergrad. MBA goals, short-term transition into product marketing or strategy at a major payments or fintech company, and target schools, OP's top choices, NYU Stern and CBS. Also planning to Booth, Ross, Fuqua, Anderson, and McDonough. What do you think overall, then, of OP's profile?
Yeah, I'm going to give that an upvote to start with because that is a really granular profile. And let's dive in then. So, okay, first from a demographic perspective, 26-year-old Asian male, pretty ORM in terms of and computer science at that. So quite a ORM background, but 5 years of work experience at matriculation, I think it says, is a very at the sweet spot in terms of age for MBA applications. So from a demographic perspective, not a bad start. Academic, 3.73 GPA is solid for sure. 3 point kind of 6 or so is the average of the M7s. So that's above average on the GPA front. 675 is about, I'd say it's bang on average of the M7s. I was looking earlier at Wharton's updated average. It's 676. So bang on the Wharton average, which is a pretty good sign. It's about equivalent to about a 720 or so on the old GMAT, which is also the historical average of the M7s, more or less. So average GMAT, slightly above average GPA. I think, though, offset by some really, or kind of strengthened by some really, really interesting work experience, both in terms of full-time work and the extracurricular hustle. Basically, I'm seeing promotions and I'm seeing impact in the day job as a marketing data analyst. There's plenty of stories in there, and I love the entrepreneurship on the side. I mean, it's almost not entrepreneurship, right? It's 170K net profit. I hope he could quit his day job and go and work in that potentially. So, a really, really nice professional background brings a lot of different perspectives to a any MBA cohort. Extracurriculars, I think this AI advisor for an education nonprofit, this is the key one. This is the gem
Mm,
for
mm,
on the extracurriculars. All the other stuff is interesting, but it's ended, and mainly it looks like happened sort of during in youth and during undergrad. So it carries a little bit less weight than the extracurriculars, which are ongoing. That is a very, very nice extracurricular, impactful, relevant to work. You could talk about building community via the education side, loads of ways that you could spin that. So extracurriculars, very, very strong. That's nice. Finally, goals. I love it when I see such a specific goal. It's one of the things we do one of the things we do with clients is really try and nail down the granular goal, granular, the companies, the titles, very, very specific. And that's what OP's already done. And I think this goal already, starts to make a lot of sense from a kind of combining previous experience perspective. So I love the short-term goal of transitioning to a product marketing or strategy role at a fintech or a payment provider. That's awesome. And I also like, to be really honest, I like that it's not IB or consulting, which we see all the time and schools see all the time. So when they see something that's very niche like this or fairly niche like this, it's quite refreshing as well. So love that. And we'll talk about the target schools specifically in a bit. But generally, yeah, really nice, great first profile.
Okay. And what do you think then his chances are for those schools specifically?
Yeah, okay. I mean, the short answer is solid. We're talking, so CBS is obviously Columbia, Booth is also M7, Ross and Fuqua and sort of the next sort of T15 or so tier down, and then Anderson and Madonna are like the T20 list. So it's quite a broad list, everything from M7 down to sort of T20. I think OP's maybe been a little bit conservative on these schools. I would be very surprised with a strong application. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get an admit to at least one or two of these top four in his list. I don't think Anderson and Madonna really need to be on his list. I think that's playing it a little bit too safe. And I would go the other way. I would even say, oh, sorry, and Stern, right? Well, fine, but Stern's sort of in the same ballpark as CBS, Booth, and Ross. Um, I would say that OP's maybe playing it a little bit safe. I probably wouldn't. I don't need Madonna or Anderson in the list. And I would say, you know what? Throw an HSW application in the mix as well, right? Throw a Harvard, Wharton, Stanford application out there. GMAT, and statistically on paper, OP's profile is there. It will come down to whether OP can make it into HSW will come down to how punchy and interesting the narrative is and whether he can justify this short-term goal. Because as I say, it's very specific and they'll like that if it can be really well justified. If it can, HSW is on the cards here.
Okay. And um, I see that you mentioned you liked OP's goals. What do you think, what kind of narrative would work best for him?
Yeah, I was thinking about this a little bit before because, as I say, narrative is key here. I want to kind of give a little bit more color as to what that might look like. So, and helpfully, OP's given us quite a lot of detail here, so I've got the information I need to kind of put piece these bits together. Wants to combine computer science background with marketing ops experience and apply that to payments. Okay, there's a bit of a lingering question as to why, right? Where does that inspiration, where does this idea come from? And that's going to be key. So I'm imagining something like, so career narrative, think of this as like Columbia Essay 1, right? 500 words, and it asks basically like, what do you want to do in the next 3 to 5 years? And why do you need Columbia? And so I'm imagining opening with a story of using AI, data analytics, computer science to drive impact. For example, there's this story about in the corporate impact, convincing the PE leadership to override some benchmarks. So tell that story from a first person perspective. You're the main character there. Meanwhile, in the side hustle, the entrepreneurship venture, maybe OP has seen difficulty with payments, for example, right? It talks about managing a remote team of four. If that remote team are in all sorts of different countries and you have to pay them, you've got to have a Wise or a Revolut account to pay people in different currencies. The markets, FX markets are shut at the weekend and you can't send a transfer, whatever. All sorts of challenges that OP could have faced managing and paying a remote team internationally. Therefore, so talk about one of those challenges. Therefore, my post MBA goal was to pivot and tackle this specific payments challenge that I've experienced myself. Specifically, my short-term goal is product marketing or strategy role at a fintech company, a payments company like Visa, MasterCard, or Amex. And then I'd want to link that into a longer term goal because a lot of schools explicitly ask, what is your long term goal? And even if they don't, it's nice to give them that visibility.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer term goal could be something like, return to entrepreneurship or focus full time on my entrepreneurial venture. But the entrepreneurial venture is I think, slightly distinguished from the goal of payments because it's not, I mean, digital media business, doesn't sound like payments is really core to that. So there could be a long-term goal that is start a new entrepreneurship venture, very much focused on this payment solution, or maybe tackling the particular challenge in a different way that is sort of more entrepreneurship led. Lots of different ways that a good entrepreneur, a good I'm mixing up my words here. A good long-term goal from entrepreneurship could fit into this narrative as well. And then there's the however moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you could make this pivot to visa already, why do you need an MBA? So really emphasize why you need an MBA to make this pivot. So, however, to join Visa, MasterCard, Amex, to launch my own entrepreneurial venture focused on payments, I need an MBA. Specifically, it could be finance training, right? That's the classic one because OP doesn't have any hardcore finance experience as far as I can see. So learning to build financial models, learning to manage a balance sheet of his entrepreneurial venture, whatever it might be. Finance is an obvious one. Another one might be formal leadership training. OP has got leadership experience, whether it's managing the remote team, whether it's arguing with the PE owners of the company. Like OP has leadership experience, but it looks like it's all self-driven and kind of he's figured it out as he goes. Formal leadership experience, formal leadership training from an MBA would be super valuable as well. Maybe there's an international element as well. Maybe it's like, oh, and finally, I want to travel with my cohort to Japan to see what payments companies there are doing to tackle this particular problem, for example. So that over 500 words is basically OP's career goals essay. Probably missed a few bits there. Sure, I've missed a few bits and I've made a lot of assumptions, etc. But you can kind of see where it's going. OP, if you'd like to work on that together and help build that, this is basically the starting point of that process. I'd love to get involved. I'd love to help you with this. I think you're in a great spot. And as I say, HSW should be on the cards.
Mm-hmm. And what else do you think OP can do besides career narrative to improve his
Um,
profile?
I mean, it would be nitpicking now. The GMAT is solid. It's not outstanding. So, a couple of 20 points on the GMAT would make a noticeable difference on this profile. So that's one thing, particularly if OP's only ever taken it once. If OP's taken it 5 times and this is the absolute limit of the score, fine,
Yeah.
don't do it anymore. But if you've never done it, if you've only done it once and this is this is what you scored and like there's upside, that's quite low hanging fruit. It's an easy thing to do. That would be
Mm-hmm.
one. The other thing I would say is on the extracurriculars, this volunteer consulting, acting as an AI advisor. I'm not sure how formalized that is. Can you get a formal title? Can you take on extra responsibilities? How can you make that work seem more impactful and more formalized? If you're just helping a friend on the side, it doesn't have the same weight as if you're formally part of an extracurricular program with a well-known educational nonprofit and where you have a title and maybe like en route to joining the junior board. That's a much more formal extracurricular, and that would strengthen OP's profile from an extracurricular perspective. And then finally, any steps you can take to formalize and kind of grow your side hustle will also increase the credibility of your profile overall. So if you've been delaying something like, establishing a formal legal entity or raising funding or something like that, doing that pre-MBA application will add strength to this profile as well.
Mhm. I think we have covered everything for
Okay,
OP.
brilliant
Um,
stuff. OP, I love your story. I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch.
yeah. Should we
Cool.
move on to our next profile for the day?
Let's do it.
Okay. Profile two. Work experience 2 years as AGM at a top 5 senior living community, 3 years in insurance sales, previous AGM experience in food service, Stats, a BBA with a 4.0 GPA. Current salary 76K plus bonuses. I think OP has put his demographic in the title. He's 28 male.
Mhm.
Um, Professional highlights, leadership, currently supervising 100 plus staff with 40 direct reports. Um, Quite a few responsibilities and awards in there as well. The dilemma. I'm looking to pivot out of dining operations and into a corporate role or a different department entirely. Originally planned to pursue a Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership, because it would only take one semester, cost very little. But OP is now wondering if an MBA is a better investment. A few questions and then we'll get to those. What do you think of OP's profile overall, Sam?
Yeah, super interesting. Well, let's start from a demographic perspective. 28-year-old male, looks like about 5 years of work experience. Um, Potentially ORM from a sort of demographic perspective, but again, at the age at 5 years of experience is at exactly the right age for an MBA. So yeah, in a good spot there. Um, 4.0 is outstanding, obviously. 4.0 GPA is really, really nice. They will like that. We don't have a GRE or GMAT yet, I don't think. So, a bit of an unknown there, but it looks like OP's not going to have too many issues with the standardized testing. I would say just a side point on that is it might be worth taking the GRE, not the GMAT, just to keep your options open in terms of master's programs. The GMAT is very
Mm,
much focused on MBA programs, but if OP decides to go the other route, then a GRE is more transferable. So I'd probably focus there if I was UOP. And then in terms of where to aim on that, something like a 325 plus would be really nice for a top MBA program if that's where the route you decide to pursue. But yeah, really strong academic profile already with that 4.0 GPA. From a professional perspective, this is insane leadership experience from a for a 28-year-old. It's really, really nice. Way more than most MBA applicants have. So definitely a strength in the profile there. Love that. And then also just a very unique industry for MBA applications. Obviously, senior living, demographically is a growing industry. It's a massive industry. But it's not one that we see very often in MBA applications. So the schools will really, really like that. And they'll take a long, hard look at your profile purely because of that. So that's nice. Um, Not so much the food side, by the way. The food part of this, which I think is this dining kind of angle, not so much. There are people applying from sort of restaurant work, etc., who are, that's a relatively bigger pool. The senior living angle is where you really stand out. So really lean into that. Um, from a performance perspective, it looks strong as well. There's this line about the awards, like consistently exceeding expectations. I'm optimistic that OP is not going to have any letter of recommendation issues
mm,
here as well, which is sometimes a factor in choosing between MBAs and masters. Obviously, in MBA, you need two letters of recommendation, so it can be a bit more challenging in that way. Looks like OP is going to be fine. That's great. Extracurriculars, no mention. Might be a gap there. Might be that OP is so busy at work that he does not have any extracurriculars to show for. That might be an issue. That might be a gap here, unknown. But leadership elsewhere, right? 40 direct reports. A lot of people use extracurriculars to give that to kind of demonstrate leadership ability. OP doesn't need them for that. So that helps. That helps. So overall, oh, actually, no, one last thing, goals. Very, very good goals here. Not
mm,
overthinking it, right? I thought maybe there'd be like I'm sick of this role, so I'm going to pivot to management consulting or something. And it's like,
mm,
oh, don't do that. Stick to your lane here, at least for the narrative, at least for the application narrative. Stick in this area. It's really, really strong. I pivot out of dining. Yeah, again, reframe this as senior living, right?
yeah.
Pivot out of senior living into a corporate role within the same kind of industry. That is playing to your strengths because you're really leaning into an industry that you have a lot of experience in, that is very unique in MBA world. That would be a beautiful goal, certainly from a short-term perspective. Longer term, something that plays into it even more, open my own senior living facility, for example, would be a great long-term goal. Just a thought.
Mhm.
So overall, again, very strong profile, a couple of little gaps there in terms of extracurriculars and GRE, but from what I can see, really, really nice. Let's give it an upvote.
Okay. OP has three questions. The first is,
Mhm.
with my background in operations and leadership, does an MBA offer a significant enough ROI over a master's degree for a corporate pivot?
Look, short answer is yes. I think so. Look, I'm an admissions consultant and I'd never heard of Mowol. Um, I really think an MBA is going to be far more recognized and open far more goals, far more, opportunities and doors over time, not just in the long term, but, immediately after MBA, some pivoting into the sort of head office function at an organization that runs senior living facilities is a very, very achievable goal and would start paying back and contributing to the ROI very quickly. So honestly, I think the MBA is absolutely the right thing to do. Your profile is very suited to it as well. If you're thinking like I'd like to do an MBA, but I'm not sure if I've really got what it takes. No, you have. You haven't got the sort of classic consulting investment banking pre-MBA background, but that just means you're in a less competitive pool. It's still a unique and interesting profile here. So I would definitely, yeah, shoot for the MBA. Maybe treat the masters as a backup plan, but shoot for the
Mhm.
MBA first. And if you're going to do the GRE anyway, why not?
Mhm. Okay. And then OP wants to know, based on my profile, what tier
Hmm.
of program should I be targeting? T25, T50, or online or part-time?
Hmm. Again, it'll depend on the GRE a lot, but let's say OP can secure something like a 325 GRE, which is not insane at all. Um, I think OP should be really targeting kind of top scores. No reason why you couldn't swing for an M7 in here. Got on paper, everything, all the boxes are checked. I
Mhm.
think T10, M7 is on the cards. If you want to go the full-time MBA route, duck out of work and really commit 2 years to it, go for it. If that, from a kind of ROI perspective, maybe you don't want to leave your work, you don't want to take on any debt, then maybe check out the part-time MBA programs of these top schools. For example, we roasted recently somebody who was looking at the Kellogg and Chicago Booth part-time MBA programs. Obviously, it depends on your city and where you're based, but a top part-time MBA program is another very, very sensible option. Forget about online, forget about T50. You're choosing between a really strong M7 T10 MBA program or a very strong part-time MBA program that is for, whatever the strongest part-time program near you is. But forget about T50 for sure.
Okay. And do you have any suggestions on specific roles or industries that value high volume, people management, and operational budgeting?
Hmm. I mean, not really. Look, there's a bit of a distinction here between putting together a narrative that gets you into business school versus actually figuring out what it is you want to do with your life. I'm here to get you into business school. And for that, the best option is, in this case, stick to that senior living theme. It's really nice from a demographic perspective, or demographics, I say it in a macro term, demographics perspective, it's a growing industry just because of the aging populations, etc. That's so that is a really strong part of OP's profile. Lean into that for sure. So for the narrative, say that you're going to go back to the senior living industry and that will work wonders with the corporate focus, right? So moving into the head office function, that's a classic MBA journey. And I'll remind people watching that an MBA originated really from industrial companies looking to train people to go from individual contributor roles to kind of head office leadership type roles. This is the original reason an MBA was invented. And
Mhm.
that's exactly the narrative that OP should be focusing on. And then during the MBA, once you've used this narrative to get admitted during the MBA, then you're free to explore other industries and maybe you find something that's really attractive that you really want to pivot into, and then you make that pivot, and the career center of the MBA program will help you make that pivot. But to be honest, at this stage, you don't need to have that. You need to have a good narrative that gets you admitted, and then worry about it during the program.
All right. Okay, that's all of OP's questions.
Cool.
Should we move on to our next profile for today?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, profile review, short one. Targeting T30 programs like Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, Georgetown, etc. 311 GRE,
Mhm.
with 3 years of work experience in commercial banking, credit underwriting, a 3.2 GPA from a private California university, while also playing 4 years of a Division One sport, having a part-time job, and being the head of an organization, not sure which one, looking to transition out of commercial banking using an MBA and planning on taking the GRE again to get closer to the 315 mark. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, let's give it an upvote from a bit of a sort of pivot here because we're really used to focusing on the M7 and OP is not focusing on M7. OP is targeting T30. Understands, I think, that the GPA is on the lower side. The GRE is on the lower side, targeting a 315, which is also not blowing the lights out. So this is really a review for sort of targeting the T30 programs. So with that in mind, from an academic, well, first from a demographic perspective. I count 3 years of experience right now. We're currently in May 2026. By the time it's about 4 months from September with another year. So about a year and 4 months to matriculation. So OP is going to be at like 4.5 years of experience of matriculation, and that's perfect for an MBA. So timing is spot on.
Mhm.
Demographics, we don't know that much. We have no idea whether ORM. I don't even think we know the gender, do we?
No, no.
No, so really very little other demographic information to read into. But from a timing wise, great. Academic, yeah, as I said, 3.2 is not ideal for the M7s, but for a T30, it's not a train wreck either, right? It's not going to prevent you from getting in. And the 311, not great, but it does lean towards quant, and
Mhm.
OP has recognized that weakness and is going to hopefully get it up by 3 or 4 points. So again, for the T30, that is passable. Now, professional. This is nice, right? Commercial banking is not one of the MBA, pre-MBA industries that has loads and loads and loads of people applying to MBAs. The classics are like the big four consultancies, for example, where like you can't throw a stone without hitting a big four MBA applicant. They're everywhere. So that's nice. A underrepresented professional background, if you will. But OP wants to transition out of it. So that will be the goals will be important. We don't know what they are, but something that leans into the commercial banking experience and skills, but is not investment banking. Because I know what's going to happen here is OP is going to say, I'm working in commercial banking and looking over at sexy investment banking kind of roles. That is a difficult pivot to make, particularly out of a T30. So I would say from a narrative perspective, try and stay closer to home. Basically, we don't know what the goals are, but it could be good, could be bad, depending on what OP writes. The extracurriculars, I think, are all during undergrad. This is a bit of a worry. I'm not sure if OP has any current extracurriculars, and if he doesn't, if she doesn't, then we have very little idea. If OP doesn't have current extracurriculars, there might be a little bit of a gap there, potentially. Goals I've talked about. So overall, not, I wouldn't say M7, but OP knows that. OP's targeting the sort of Notre Dame, Vanderbilt type schools. And I think for those schools, not a bad position to be in.
Okay. Um, so do you think T30 is the range that OP should go for? Could OP, is there a chance of aiming higher?
Yeah, maybe T20.
Hmm.
Maybe T20. Throw some sort of UNC Keenan Flagler type schools in the
Hmm.
mix. And they might they might go up at that GRE if it doesn't get any higher. But if it does come in at the 315, 318 kind of level, maybe throw some T20s in the mix as well, yeah.
Okay. And what do you think OP can do to improve their chances?
Yeah, aside from retaking the test, which I hope he's already doing, the key thing here is going to be explaining that GPA.
Hmm.
I think OP's got a very good reasoning, a really good optional essay that he or she can write to explain that 3.2 GPA. This is
Mhm.
the main other thing. So it's it's not a train wreck to the point where like it's going to keep you out, but they are going to be looking at it and thinking, I wonder why. And 4 years of D1 sport, working part-time through undergrad, been heavily involved in an organization there, that is exactly what they want to hear to explain the 3.2 GPA. So the key point I would say is write the optional essay, explain the GPA in that optional essay, and retake the test. And those are the two main things between now and September.
Okay. All right. That was a short and sweet roast. Should
Cool.
we move on to our last profile for today?
Yeah, sure. Quite a lot of comments in there, but they seem to be echoing what I was saying.
Mhm.
So cool. Let's dive into the last profile.
All right. 26 female, work experience 3.5 years, 4 years in October this year in telco in Japan, currently working as a solution architect, have also worked as a product manager, GMAT 665 with an 87 quant, 84 verbal, electrical engineering background from a tier one engineering school in India. I think I saw in the comments somewhere that OP is from an IIT,
Mhm.
with a GPA of 8.2 out of 10. Took French for 5 years in school and know a little bit of Japanese. Have leadership and volunteering experience plus sports experience, considering INSEAD, LBS, Oxford, HEC Paris, NUS, and NTU. Hoping to understand where I stand. What do you think?
Awesome. I love it. I love this profile. OP has done a lot of research. There's a very natural fit between OP's profile and these target schools. And I love when I see that. Let me explain why. So, from a demographic perspective, look, Indian engineer, yes, female, but still, Indian engineer is ORM. So, that's something to bear in mind. But in terms of experience, 4 years in October 26. That'll be more like 5 years at matriculation in September, October 27. So bang on the European average of about 5 years. So really good timing. Academic. IIT, obviously well recognized, and I did go through the comments there a moment ago, and I did confirm that. So obviously the IIT brand is going to be strong, and the 8.2, I think it was, yeah, 8.2 out of 10 GPA, CGPA is not bad either. It's very solid. So the 665 is the only other point on it from an academic perspective. Look, it's okay. Particularly for the European schools, it's okay. It's not the highest. It's not OP strength for sure. Maybe room for some improvement there, depending on how many times OP's taken it. But anyway, again, solid. It's about 93rd percentile, so we can't argue with it. But the Indian engineers are so smart and so good at standardized testing that maybe, yeah, you're not going to stand out from a GMAT perspective, put it that way. Now, professional, this is interesting. I had to honestly kind of do a bit of background research about what a solutions architect at a telco in Japan would be doing. Basically, from what I can see, it's pretty hardcore engineering work. And it would also, as well, besides the hardcore engineering work, there's also quite a lot, there's some bridging required. OP's going to be bridging between different teams,
Mm,
communication skills, and I think if that is in Japan, as I think we yeah I think that's in Japan, there's
yeah.
probably a cultural bridge going on there as well. So interesting work experience and definitely not something we see every day. And it looks like OP is doing fairly well there, has moved to Japan with this role. Um, I think OP is doing pretty well from a work experience perspective. We don't know for sure, but it looks fairly solid. Um, and as I'm going to get onto in a moment, the international experience of that working in Japan is something the European schools, and particularly INSEAD, will absolutely love. So, good professional experience. Extracurriculars. Don't think we know much. I hope there is something going on. Look, even if it's language learning, moving to Japan and learning Japanese, that could be framed as an extracurricular potentially. So I think there's something there, but I don't know explicitly. So I'll skip that. But now the other the language factor here. This will be absolutely key. One of the key things that the European schools are looking for, and the UK schools as well, is international experience and particularly a second language, and especially a second European language. That
Mhm.
5 years of French in school will be wonderful for HEC and for INSEAD. They will love it. So, really good international experience and languages fitting with the European programs. So, that's fantastic. Goals, we have no idea. No mention of goals, I don't think, except for I'm telling you, they will be important, OP. These will matter a lot. Why? Because I suspect that if you are leaving Japan to go to either, NUS in Singapore or Europe or the UK or whatever it may be, basically you're not going to be going back to Japan, which means you're already making a career geography pivot. So my advice will be to keep your work pivot fairly small.
Mm.
And I will talk about this in a moment, but yeah, the goals are going to be super important.
Okay. Um, so where do you think OP stands then for those schools?
I'd say an unusually strong Indian engineering profile for the UK and European schools.
Mm-hmm.
International experience in a second European language and IIT. They
Mm-hmm.
don't see that every day.
Yeah.
OP's
And what,
absolutely in the right position for those European schools.
yeah, yeah. And what do you think OP can do, like overall can do to improve her profile then?
Yeah, like basically to convert, like has got everything on paper. Now let's
Mhm.
convert it to an offer. Look, as I said earlier, the GMAT's not great. It's not bad, but it's not great. If you've only taken that once, there's some upside there. Maybe consider taking it again. Then the other
Mhm.
thing is going to be working on the goals. As I said, this is going to be challenging because there's going to be almost de facto a geographical pivot required in the
Yeah.
goals. So I would say to work, spend time working on that career narrative and basically building a career narrative that says, yes, I'm going to move internationally, and that does involve some uncertainty, but I'm going to pivot into a role that is quite similar to what I'm already doing. I think OP's like starting point from a career narrative needs to be my short-term goal is to pivot into the same role but at a European company,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
I'm in Spain right now. Mobistar is a well-known company here, telco company here. They will be doing lots of the same. I have no idea what solution architects really do, but I bet that they'll be doing a lot of the same solution architect stuff at Mobistar in Spain as the telco in Japan is doing. Or maybe
Mhm.
they're a bit behind, and OP can bring the Japanese perspective. And if that's the case, those European companies would love that.
Mhm.
So that's the key thing is spend some time getting that narrative right because it's going to be really, really important.
Okay. All right. I think that's all of our profiles for today.
Awesome. OP, if you'd like help putting that narrative together and converting that into essays that are going to get you these offers from the European schools, love to help you with that. Really, really think you're in a good spot. Let's get that over the line. Okay. Yeah, we've got a dilemma, don't we?
Yes, we do a bonus dilemma. Getting cold feet looking at a 130K debt amount for a T15 school. OP says, I had a decent application season. I secured two full tuition offers from a T25. From two T25s, I got money from T20 and I got money from T15. When I first started this MBA journey 2 years ago, I was hell bent on optimizing cost, but I slowly got pulled into the prestige game. That's why OP took a bet on Darden, but now feels burnt out, has had 5 GMAT attempts, lost my father days before round two, and quit my job a month ago. Now I feel like not going back to my old job. I hated it. I'm not able to muster the courage to take on a high debt as an international who doesn't come from money. And then OP's kind of worried, why don't I invest that money in myself and try to start a business and then apply again? What do you think OP should do in this position?
That last line really sums it up, doesn't it? Every decision
Yeah.
feels like a pit I might never come out of. Look, I'm an MBA admissions consultant, not a life coach, but I've got
Mm,
some opinions on this, so I'll chip in. Look, the first thing I'd say is that optimizing for ROI and optimizing for cost is a very, very sensible approach.
Mhm.
There is we see it occasionally here. Every now and again, we see roasts or we roast profiles that are doing this, and I absolutely vibe with it. Like personally, I am very debt averse. This was exactly the approach that I took when I went into my MBA. I chose the offer with the highest scholarship number, and I totally understand where OP is coming from. I also understand this idea of the getting pulled into the prestige game. This is
Yeah.
a this is a forum thing. This is a Reddit thing, right? The forums like this one will drag people into the prestige competition because it's an easy label, right?
Hmm.
I got into school X, which is ranked five versus someone else, some other person who got into school that's ranked seven, and all of a sudden the person who's five is somehow better. Bullshit. It's not necessarily the right approach. So I absolutely understand this kind of tension that you're feeling between your initial approach and the prestige game that the forums kind of push at you. Not to say there isn't some value to the prestige and the brands that for example, the M7 brands. There's definitely some value for that. But if it's a choice between going into an MBA nervous about the amount of debt that you've got versus going in and just having a total clean slate, there is definitely an argument to be made for the high ROI for the low debt option. This is also exacerbated by four, five rankings that come out every year. And every
Hmm.
year, there's volatility, and every ranking triggers a whole load of discussion online about, oh, MIT got placed above Wharton. Is that right? And it's just this never-ending chit chat that makes people kind of, doubt themselves a bit.
Hmm.
And I'm not, it's not necessarily the right approach. Now, one thing I do want to do is if we take a stance of like, okay, go to Darden, take
Hmm.
130K dollars of debt. Let me walk you through as an international. Let me walk you through how those numbers look and how other people are justifying that debt. I can't tell you whether it's the right thing to do or not, given your risk appetite, etc. But what I can kind of do is paint a picture of how other people are justifying it. So basically, and actually, I think there was a comment down here that was like, this was what kind of inspired me. 130K in debt is nothing in the long run. And as a European, I'm like, "Oh, what? How can you say that?" But let me walk you through the numbers and explain how, so from an American perspective, those numbers do add up. So the first thing is that you're in between a US MBA program like Darden is going to be 2 years. And between the 2 years, you're going to have a summer internship, hopefully. Certainly, if you put your mind to it and really apply hard, you'll get a summer internship. And the salaries for those vary, but like comfortably earn 25 to 45K that summer. If you were going to
Hmm.
intern in like big tech or consulting and something, and you'd kind of have to, right? So I'm assuming that you're going to follow a fairly lucrative career route for this to work. But yeah, let's say you do an internship in sort of tech or consulting and you make 25, 30, 40K in the summer. Maybe two-thirds of that put aside to cover some of the debt. So now your 130 has become 100.
Hmm.
Then from a post MBA role perspective, let's say you convert your internship or you find an industry that you quite like, consulting or tech, whatever, and you decide to pursue that in your post MBA job applications. The classic sort of short-term post MBA offer. Now the job market's changing, but you can expect 100 anywhere from like 160 to 200K as kind of as a post MBA salary if you're going into a classic post MBA role, tech, consulting, banking, whatever it may be, and with a typically like a 30 or 40K sign-on bonus as well. And let's say that sign-on bonus is 40K and you put 30,000 of it into paying off your debt. Your 130 has gone to 100 and is now at 70.
Hmm.
Okay. Now you start your work in consulting, in tech, in banking, whatever it may be, at 180 or so K per year. And let's say of that, you can quite aggressively put away, I don't know, 40, 30, 40K a year. your 70K of debt becomes 35 and then it becomes zero in 2 or 3 years of post MBA earnings. So if you can get into one of these kind of well paid industries in the US, you can pay down 130K of debt aggressively quite quickly. And
Mm,
that's how Americans are looking at that number and thinking, "Yeah, that's not so bad." And that's how that commenter's saying 130K is there's nothing or whatever. But the flip side of this is the risk as an international.
mm,
We don't know, the assumption that you're going to get into consulting, the assumption that you're going to get into big tech, into IB is a big one,
mm,
particularly if the US administration tightens up the rules for graduates, international graduates working in those industries. The OPT system at the moment provides a window, an opportunity to make, a strong US dollar salary for a couple of years after the MBA, but that's not guaranteed to exist in a few years' time. So that's the risk basically. And the risk is that you go back to your home country, we call it, and then you're saddled with USD 130K of debt and your currency is devalued. You're earning, let's say euros for the sake of argument, euro poor salary, and the euro's getting weaker against the dollar, and then your 130K looks like a problem. And that's basically the trade-off. That's the risk. Now, the unknowns, which are basically going to be the driver here, is which industry you focused on. What was your pre-MBA salary? Because that'll drive your post-MBA salary. Um, and do you have the financial cushion right now to be able to use all of your internship money to pay off debt, all of your sign-on bonus to pay off debt?
mm,
Because if you're already in a financial pickle, you won't be able to do that, and so the problem will compound. So that's basically the unknowns that will swing it, in my opinion. Interesting topic though, and yeah, good luck, OP. I hope it works out for you. I think it will. It looks like a pretty I'd say overall manageable situation.
mhm. Yeah, OP does mention what you said about being international in the comments as well,
Mhm.
that the 100K salary is the bar that OP set for themselves in the US. But if they
Ah.
have to return, that they might only make 35 to 40K post-tax. That's where the math breaks.
Mhm. So I'd have to set the bar at 100K post-tax at max. I guess that means at
Mm-hmm.
minimum. Realism is what's giving me cold feet. This is the US salary. If I have to return, I might make 30, 40K max post-tax. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So it
Mm-hmm.
looks like, I mean, that looks like it could be a European or sort of Asian salary, maybe. Yeah. And then, you're talking trying to put away, let's say aggressively 10 grand a year to pay down the debt, and you're looking at 13 years of student loans, assuming no interest, which is not the case either. So yeah, that's the pickle. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. All I can
All
say is
right.
good luck.
Yeah. Good luck, OP.
Good luck. And yeah, maybe let us know what you decided on. I'd be really keen. I love when we can follow up with people. Send us a
Mm-hmm.
DM or a comment or whatever. We're gonna comment below on your post. So if you let us know what you decided, it'd be really, really interesting. Matt, I think that's it for today.
Yes, that's all of our profiles.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you very, very much. Anybody watching, if you'd enjoyed today's roast, we are currently taking on round one clients. So it's May, typically our round one clients, we're working with them from May, June, July, August. And we are also roasting on a regular basis. So we're at roast, I think 55, we said today. So every week we're putting out these roasts and evaluating people's profiles. So like and subscribe if you'd like to watch more of these. I like to think quite blunt and direct and honest evaluations of people's hopes and dreams.
Yeah,
Good
very
stuff.
helpful and blunt evaluation.
Helpful contributions to people's hopes and dreams.
Yes.
Love it. Wow. I'll see you next
All
week.
right. All right. See you next
Take
week.
care. See you. Bye.